Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to this, the 52nd annual Hardy Chair Talk. My name is Jim Mullen, and I am Hartwick's interim president. And I am very honored to join you tonight in welcoming our most distinguished guest lecturer. The Hardy Chair Lecture Series was originally endowed in 1971, and the first lecture was delivered in 1972. It has hosted such speakers as Dr. Gary Lafree in 2017, Dr. Amy Fitzgerald in 2018, Dr. Joel Best in 2019, and most recently, Tim Daly, the director of the Joyce Foundation's Gun Violence Prevention and Justice Program, and Dr. Cheryl Johnson, associate professor at Xavier University. In addition to funding a named chair in either the Department of Sociology, Criminology, and Human Services or Anthropology, the Hardy Endowment provides the college with a fund that brings speakers to campus who connect their academic studies or their personal experiences with information of interest to the contemporary community. So I would like to thank the Department of Sociology, Criminology, and Human Services for hosting this talk. Special thanks also go out to our Criminal Justice Honor Society, the Pi Gamma Gamma chapter of Alpha Phi Sigma, who earned a chapter grant from the national office to help fund this evening's event. So I thank you for attending and for all each of you mean to Hartwick, a college with a proud history and a strong, vibrant future. A future devoted to building community around academic excellence and the dignity of all who study here, teach here, work here, and visit here. So without further ado, I turn it over to Dr. Cheryl Johnson, who will introduce our Hardy Chair speaker for this evening. Thank you all very much.
All right, good evening, everyone. Before I introduce our speaker, I wanted to extend a thank you to all the people who helped make this event possible. First, to my co-chair, Professor Amber Kerwin, for helping to organize the event and making sure everybody had enough food, especially in the evenings. My department and the third floor of Golisano for being an amazing support system and helping to spread the word of this Hardy Chair lecture. To Chris Spiewak, Damon, and all the IT and tech folks who made everything run so smoothly. Finally, to the Hartwick Office of Academic Affairs and our interim president, Jim Mullen, your support and being here today helps to reinforce the importance of these types of events. So now, on to our speaker and the one you are here to see tonight. Walter Dunn is a criminal justice advocate, motivational speaker, author, radio host, legal analyst, and his passion for being a criminal justice speaker is deeply rooted because of his personal experience of having his criminal conviction overturned. This life-altering event has fueled a fervent commitment to advocating for justice reform. His journey from being wrongfully convicted to successfully overturning the verdict has given Walter a unique perspective on the flaws and shortcomings within the criminal justice system. This experience serves as a powerful catalyst for his dedication to raising awareness about issues such as wrongful convictions, false guilty pleas, juvenile statistics, and the urgent need for a fair and impartial legal process. As a criminal justice speaker, Walter aims to share his compelling story to shed light on the challenges individuals face within the system and inspire positive change. His passion is driven by a desire to contribute to a more just and equitable criminal justice system, emphasizing the importance of reform through the lens of his own remarkable and redemptive experience. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing your amazing story, Walter.
gotta learn how to parent.
What man made for evil, God is making for good. Over the last almost 13 years, he has not had any contact with his children.
The house that you see behind me is where my freedom got taken away from. I got sentenced to 27 years, but I stand here today as a free man. Our state right now sends more juveniles to prison than any other state in the country. Florida will send children to prison at an alarming rate, and you can Google it, you can look it up, it's statistic, it's facts. Florida sends the most juveniles to prison. We're taking children off of the street and putting them in prison versus putting them in college. And nobody is standing firm to try to fix that. Good morning, City Council members. My name is Walter Dunn. I'm a criminal justice advocate. My question for the council today is, with returning citizens coming back to our city from prisons all over the state of Florida, what job assistance and housing opportunities do we have to offer them? There are many grant opportunities available from the federal government to help with our great city. Why aren't we taking advantage of this? You have opportunity to further our outreach program while reducing recidivism at the same time. If there is no real, program or process that's available, I will be here to the end of the session today. I have some great ideas and would love to discuss it with the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I ask Ms. Jen, may I have a fast, please?
Yes, sir.
If you want to meet outside, I don't want to take the council's time on it, but we're actually working on something. If you want to meet outside, I'd love to talk with you.
Sure. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hartwick College, good evening. Thank you so much for watching the clip of my story. My name is Walter Dunn. I am a criminal justice advocate, author, motivational speaker, legal analyst. I travel the country not only speaking at universities about my story and intertwining it with academic theories, but I do outreach programs not only in my community but across the state and a little bit further into the country about change. Tonight I'll be able to share my story with you on what took place the night of my arrest, how it shaped my life, and how it's given me purpose. Before I start, I definitely want to thank the president. I want to thank Dr. Johnson and all the wonderful professors that they have here at Hartwick that made this collaboration come to fruition. You guys have rolled out the carpet for me. It's had been a remarkable time here. I got a chance to see Main Street, and I think everybody that I met played for lacrosse. So I'm just very grateful to be here, to be able to share my story, and then put purpose back into this university. One thing I can say from all the universities that I've been through is this has a different feel. You know, coming here to this community seems close-knit. It seems like you have professors that wear multiple hats, not just a professor, not just an academic advisor, a safety coach. You know, so they have a feel of let's try to push and let's try to be involved in your life. And a lot of universities I go to, that mentorship, that extra push to make sure that you're being successful is not there. So when I came here and I started noticing that professors here know names, you're just not another number. They care if you come to class. They care if you turn in your homework. They take a real sense of purpose, and that's just special because a lot of universities I go to, they don't care about that. So to see that you have professors that want to be engaged in your life, please cherish that and understand that that's not given out at other universities. So to see that it's here, is commendable to the president, to the faculty who go above and beyond and want to make sure that you're educated. So I just wanted to say that for thank you. My story, has been told plenty of places, and the purpose for me telling my story is to show you what can happen to you with 20 minutes of your life. I had never been arrested a day in my life. In fact, the day that I got arrested, I was currently going to school just like you. I was attending the University of South Florida, majoring in communications. In some off-land dream, I thought I could be a sports broadcaster where I could tell the stories or talk about the box scores or talk about the football team going 1-9, or just somewhere where I could, talk about sports, and that had always been my passion. It's something that I love. It's something that, I grew up, prior to, when I was young, I received a baseball scholarship that I went out to California and played baseball. So being in sports has always been a part of my life, and that's kind of like, couldn't play the sport, so let's go and at least be in a communication field where I could still be involved. And when I was going to school, I was majoring in communications. I was probably 7 classes away from graduating, and on November 2nd, 2009, I was arrested for the first time in my life. How I got there was something that I couldn't foresee. Prior to November 2nd, 2009, I had everything going for me. I was a homeowner. I was a director of admissions at a university, Everest University Online, working there for 6 years. I helped students just like you get enrolled. Well, maybe not students just like you. I was more geared to the students who were the working families, the single moms, the people who wanted to be an educator and go back to school because they knew that it would help them advance in their career with making more money or being able to find a better job. So those are the demographic of the students that I went for to help them get enrolled. I had everything, like I said, I was a homeowner, I was a director of admissions, I coached Little League baseball in the community, hence the baseball. I helped with a nonprofit organization where we help young men focus on future success. Everything in my life was going picture perfect. I had never been arrested. The only thing that was a problem in my life was the relationship that I was in. I was in a relationship that was deteriorating. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where maybe you outgrow somebody or your values don't line up anymore, but I was in the real world working extremely hard, taking care of my 2 children, and the relationship that I was in was just failing. And I decided to get out of it, and I just wanted to end things amicably, to move on, be peaceful. And when that took place, the woman that I was in a relationship with eventually tried to commit suicide, and this was happening in the presence of my children. When this happened, the first thing I thought about was, something so precious to me I could have lost. Something that I hold dear to my heart, I work hard for, could have been taken away from me forever. And when that happened, I immediately took legal action. I filed for divorce. I got full custody of my children, home, marital status, and everything else that came with it. And the court system asked that individual to be outpatient Baker Acted, because back then we didn't have a lot of awareness for mental health and deteriorations of the mind. You know, it's prevalent now, but back then there wasn't much information about that. But the court system separated us, gave that person an injunction to stay away from me and the children. And from that moment, it was a little difficult. I had never knew how to do hair. You know, I have a daughter, combing hair in the morning, putting on a little ponytail, trying to get the line straight, or, you know, trying to make sure that I get the kids up every morning for school, and getting orange juice and donuts on the way. And these things were new, but I was gravitating to them because, you know, I was willing to step up to the plate. You know, I believe that when you're a man, you take care of your responsibilities. And this is what's going on. This is what was going on until November 2nd, 2009. I never knew at that time that a hurricane was brewing off of the coast of my life. And that's kind of the way I explain it. You know, if you look at, I'm from Florida, if you look at it, the hurricane comes, you see the forecast, and either it hits you or it swerves to the right and it misses you. But a lot of times it'll leave debris behind, or it will send catastrophic winds that will tear up your community, and there's a rebuilding process. Well, this is exactly what was taking place off my life, and I didn't know, wasn't aware, and there was no defense to stop it. So on November 2nd, 2009, we had been separated, and the judge asked that I keep the children away from her. And in this process, I felt that it was impossible to have two beautiful children asking where their parent was, and my only excuse was she's at work, or, you know, she has other things, and I would bend the rules and allow her to see the children on the off chance of just meeting somewhere in the neighborhood, or meeting at like a ice cream place or a thing of that nature, just so the children could be satisfied. But as far as a relationship standpoint, that was completely over with. You know, it had already been deteriorating. When this attempted suicide happened, I decided to cut all ties, didn't want anything. There was a line drawn, there was no crossing it. One of the things that I used to do was coach Little League baseball, and on this particular night, my son had practice just like a normal night. You know, I woke up, went to work, got off work, went to practice, and after practice, I got a phone call that said, "Hey, can I please just see the children tonight?" And this was on the ride home. I was told, "Hey, come to this address," an address I had never been before, but it was on the ride home. And the community that I stayed in, I pretty much knew all the areas. So if you say, "Hey, take Main Street, you make it right, look for Autumn Restaurant, it's right here," simple. On this night, I pull up to the residence for her to be able to see my children, and my children in the front seat. You know, the ballpark is probably 2 minutes away from the house, so it's just a small neighborhood. When I pull up to the house, I get out, knock on the door to say, "Hey, you know, I'm here. I had been asked for a couple dollars for gas. It was no problem. I thought I could do a respectful thing of give some gas, let her see the children, and go on home," like I had did countless other times before. On this particular night, when I knocked on the door, a gentleman that I do know, or did know, came to the door half drunk and became belligerent immediately. In the process of asking to see the mother of my children, you know, a fight ended up breaking out between me and him at the front doorstep, something that I had never encountered. I had never been arrested. I had never been in a fight. Obviously, I knew how to protect myself, but these things I had never encountered, and in this split second, this was going on. In the process of getting in the fight with this gentleman, my ex runs from the living room and tries to break up the fight, and this guy says, "I'm going to get a gun, I'm going to kill you." And in this moment, the only thing that I could think about was the safety of my children. You know, I had came over here to do something good. I'm bleeding, a fight has taken place, and my responsibility now is to get out of here and take my children to safety. And that's exactly what I did. In the process of getting back into my vehicle, my ex ended up running in the vehicle and jumping in the car as well. I didn't think nothing of it, because if somebody tells you that they're going to get a gun, my mindset is just to get everybody out of here, to get everybody to safety, that, you know, if I could protect us, hey, we could address this later and just get out of there. In the process of going home, I get to my residence. I had a 2-story home at that time. I get my children out of the car. I take them upstairs. I'm telling them everything's going to be all right. I'll be back downstairs. And when I came back downstairs, my ex at the time was walking in the garage, and I ended up closing the garage, and ended up sitting in the laundry room because we had a separate laundry room. And I was just trying to gather myself on how did I get into a fight and why was I getting in the fight, and just trying to break down that sense. And in the process of trying to rationalize what was taking place, I heard noises coming from the garage. When I went out into the garage that evening, my ex was pouring gasoline on herself, saying that I just want to die, you're never going to want me again, and was just completely breaking down. This garage was the same place that she attempted the first suicide attempt at. So in the process of screaming at her to put the gas can down and stop doing this, and I heard a noise outside. And in the process of hearing this noise outside, immediately I thought it was the guy. The guy knows where I stayed at. He has been in my house before. His mother stays 3 houses down. At that point in time when I was going through the situation, I never knew that they had an affair going on for about 6 months. I didn't learn this later till I went to trial. But in the process of hearing the noise, I thought to myself, I need to go face him, or else he could come in here and start shooting and something bad could happen to my children. When I went outside, I hit the garage button. There was about 18, 19 law enforcement officers in my front yard. And if you've ever been in a place where things become hazy or you can't believe it's happening, it was in that moment that I became paralyzed, that I could not believe that I went over there and got into a fight, and then there was all these officers standing in my front yard. Immediately I was yelled to get down. There was guns drawn on me. I was terrified. And in the process of getting down, my ex runs out of the garage and said he's trying to kill me. In that moment, I had probably about 5 officers tackle me, nearly breaking my shoulder, putting me in handcuffs. And in this process, I still couldn't figure out why this was happening. It's just like I was in a bad dream and this was taking place, and I was asking somebody to wake me up. And that night I was arrested. Never had been in trouble. I had law enforcement in my family. I understand the law. That moment, I was placed in the back of a police car for the first time in my life and couldn't understand how did I get there. And in that moment when I was going to jail, I kept asking the officer, what am I being arrested for? I haven't committed any crimes. Why so many police officers at my house? That night, instead of taking me to the county jail, our local, well, I'm not going to say local government, but our community, when an arrest is made, they take you to the hospital. Because if you are injured and you go to a county jail and you get hurt in the county jail, the person has the ability to sue the county jail or sue local government, because you're going to say that they got hurt, and then that's a way to get money. But our standard procedures is they take you to the hospital, double check you, then take you to the jail. And in the process of going to the hospital, I kept asking the arresting officer, why am I going to jail? And he kept repeating he didn't know. He was just transporting me, standard procedure. I go to the hospital. I'm seen by a doctor that night. I don't explain what happened. I'm just there to get checked. I'm told to be quiet, don't say nothing. There was no injuries. I had a small cut on the side of my hand. That's where I was bleeding at. From that moment, I was transported to the jail, and I was doing the intake process like you normally see on TV. And the whole time I'm thinking about, I just need to call my mom. She was leaving for, I want to say Spain within a few days, and I needed to tell her that, hey, I have been arrested. Please come and get me. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm sure that you could just post a bail and get me out, and I could come home. And when I made that phone call, as any parent would do, they would become hysterical. They were trying to figure out what's going on and immediately want to help you. And this is the same exact way that my mother started addressing the phone call. She went from caregiver to general. What do we need to do? Hey, what's going on? Let's try to fix it. That night, after processing and making my first free phone call, I was taken back to the holding cell to be processed into a housing unit to sleep at. And then I became 5 o'clock news that man tries to kill wife. And immediately, I became high profile, where I didn't go to general pop. I was taken from the holding cell and placed in confinement, because they have a clause that if you make the news, you became a danger to the people in there, or you become a danger to yourself. So they put you in a holding cell. So here I was, a normal day, waking up, and now I'm in confinement. A place that's small as a bathroom with no windows, no sheets, no clothes, nothing. And I'm in here and I'm trying to figure out how did I get here? But more importantly, how do I get out of here? And I'm an educated man. I had an associate's degree. I was going to a university to further my education. I worked at a university. So things are processing in my brain as in, why did I get here? You know, or better yet, why am I being charged with crimes and process, but nobody could tell me what my charges were. Eventually, I go to first appearance court. And in this first appearance court, they're reading off charges, and at that time, I didn't know what a felony was. You could have told me I spray painted the wall, and I still wouldn't have understood what it was, or how much time it carried. And I don't remember first appearance court because I was such in a daze with media being there and being arrested. All I wanted to know was, how can I make bail? Because in my heart, I felt that as long as I can get out in bail, I can get a reputable lawyer, and everything will get taken care of. I will be able to prove my innocence, that, you know, whatever I was charged with didn't occur, and then I can move on with my life and can clearly be done with the situation. For the first time, I had a bail hearing. I was told that anytime you have a dispute against a woman and a man, you're held in jail until an appropriate bond hearing can take place in front of a judge. Didn't know this. So if there's a domestic violence issue with a man or woman, you got to be held in jail until you can see an appropriate judge to make sure that that cooling period has taken place and there's no recourse that you want to hurt anybody. This took place about 2 weeks later of me being incarcerated, still in confinement. I went to my first bond hearing, and I was denied bail. Not that I had been charged with a murder, not that anybody was hurt in this case, nobody was hospitalized, but I was being denied because the man and the woman showed up and said, if you let him out, he's going to hurt the both of us. So on that, I was denied bail due to public safety. And I couldn't figure out, why would I be trapped in bail if I never had a criminal record? I have never did anything wrong, but yeah, I'm being denied a constitutional right to be free and fight my case. Immediately, I started to educate myself at that point on the charges. That night, I was charged with 4 felonies. I was charged with home invasion robbery. I was charged with a felony battery. I was charged with a kidnapping. And I was charged with an assault. If you would have told me what those charges carry or how egregious they are, I would have been clueless. 2 of those charges carried a life sentence apiece. The home invasion robbery, 1 life sentence. The kidnapping, 1 life sentence. So if you went to trial and lost on that, you could get a life sentence for either charge. Never got bail. The plea deal came eventually that I would be extended a plea offer to go to prison or go to trial. And those were my alternatives. 15 years, sign and take your life over to Florida State Prison for these crimes, or you can roll the dice and go to trial. And I was never going to sign for something I didn't do. You know, I was not raised to take accountability for things that I didn't do. I was raised that if you do something wrong, you hold yourself accountable and you meet the mercy of whatever the fate is. You never accept for something that you didn't do. And in this moment, I couldn't fathom how long 15 years were. I started thinking about, I'm this age, if you put 15 on top, I'm going to get out and be an old man, or, you know, time is going to go by. I'm not going to be able to see family and friends. And I kept fighting charges. My family would hire an attorney. The attorney would try to push me to a plea deal. I would tell my family that I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm not going to plea out. We would get another lawyer. You know, there are times in life where you must fight, you must stand firm. And in my heart, this was one of those moments that I wasn't going to sign my life over to the Department of Corrections for something I just didn't do. It just did not sit right with me. And my family would go find another lawyer, and that was the song and dance for several attorneys. We hired and fired because they wanted to push me to a plea deal. I didn't know until the 6th or 7th lawyer that I was a big fish to Hillsborough County, and that if you trade me into a plea deal, that a lot of times the lawyers could get favoritism on future cases if they gave me up. About 15 months of sitting in incarceration or sitting in jail, my state attorney comes to me and she says, well, in court, you know, she says, well, you don't want to accept the 15-year plea deal. I'm going to add a 5th additional charge on you. I'm going to add an attempted murder on you for the gasoline. If you don't want to accept the plea deal, I'm going to put that charge on you. And I'm going to up your plea deal from 15 years to 22 years now. So because I was fighting my case and standing firm, now because of fighting, I was charged with a 5th additional charge of attempted murder. And for the life of me, you know, the police at the scene of the crime never charged me with this. This was never even talked about. But because I was fighting my case and going through lawyers and upsetting my state attorney, she started taking my case personal and put a 5th additional charge on me. Well, the 5th additional charges obviously increases the likelihood of me going to prison, obviously increases the bail if I was ever awarded one. The fight just became harder. And this is after 15 months of sitting in the county jail. It was about probably about 24 months, it really started to hit me. My plea offer was 22 years, or it was going to trial. And I was told specifically on some of the occasions that I went to court that, Walt, if you lose trial, if you go to trial and you lose, I'm going to personally give you a life sentence. My state attorney would tell me this verbatim, face to face. If you go to trial and you roll the dice, I'm going to give you a life sentence, and I'm going to find pleasure in giving it to you that you'll never walk free again. And these words would hurt me. They would crush me. In the middle of the night, I would wake up in tears and crying and nightmares that it's a real possibility that I may never walk free again. Or it's a real possibility that I take a plea deal to go to prison for something I didn't do. And I couldn't understand, they say innocent until proven guilty. And here it is, I can't even get a bond. I'm already guilty. The system already looks at me as I'm guilty. They said they had a preponderance of evidence on me that already supports that I committed all these crimes. And there were a nice officer that worked my housing unit, and he actually was a Little League football coach that I played for when I was a child. And I asked him, one day I said, can you just Google the 2 best attorneys in the country? And he did it for me. And that night, I wrote both of them a letter asking that a lifeguard be sent to rescue my life, that I had been taken in an undercurrent, and I was taken far out of there, and I need somebody with this type of expertise to swim against the currents of injustice to come back and save me, that I was far out of reach for average people. I need somebody special that could take up this fight and fight to bring me home, somebody that was trained to swim through the rigorous currents to come and get me. And one was a guy out of Atlanta, Georgia, and one was a lady out of New York. So these were the 2 best people at the time, both $1 million people. I sent the letter off. I didn't think nothing of it. I just felt like, at least in my heart, I was doing something good. At least I felt like the fight was still in me. And then one night, I'm at visitation, and I'm with my mother, and I just break down crying. I just tell her, Mom, I said, you know, these people already look at me as I'm guilty, and I'm gonna ask the state attorney if I could just accept a 15-year plea deal. And for some of the people who know me, you know, my mother is like my best friend. You know, somebody I can tell anything to, somebody I can cry on, somebody I can look for motivation, determination, encouragement. And in this moment, when I'm telling her I'm just going to plea out or try to get the 15 years, she looks at me and she says, you know, I never raised you to be that man. And if you accept a plea deal to go to prison for something you didn't do, then don't ever call me. I'll see you when you get out. And she hung the phone up on me. And, you know, it just crushed me. It just crushed me to know that the one person that I looked to had delivered a final blow of where she stood at and how hard we've been fighting and didn't want to see me throw in the towel. But still in my mind, 22 years at the age that I was, I felt that, you know, the odds were stacked against me. And then something unique happened. My mother received a phone call from both attorneys. So there was a lady named Stacy, which is from New York. Her father was the one who represented John Gotti back in his era. And there was a guy named Steve Sadow. If you Google him right now, he's President Trump's attorney. These 2 letters went out to these 2 individuals, and both of them had called, and both of them said they would meet my mother. Stacy was in New York, but my mother had worked in Atlanta, Georgia with dentistry. So she was there where Steve Sadow's headquarters is in Atlanta. And I didn't know this at the time. So I was kept in blind. I was in jail. My family kept this away from me. My mother ended up meeting Steve, who is, I told you, President Trump's attorney right now, and had the conversation with him about the type of water that I was in, that I was drowning out there, and there was nobody that was from my community that could swim out there and get me, and that we needed somebody who wasn't a part of the system to come in and fight for my freedom. You know, they had a conversation, And the amount of money he asked for was just hard to swallow. And the lady in New York, my mother called, but she didn't have a good feeling for the lady. She had a great feeling for Steve. Plus, she felt that if somehow miraculously we could get him, you know, she works in Atlanta, he's from Atlanta, she could always stay on top of him. And right when I was about to give up, she says, Walt, your whole family came together, and we got Steve Siddall to represent you. And immediately my first thought was the officer who Googled this, but second of all, this is a $1 million man. In my mind, I'm trying to figure out, how did my family afford this? How did collectively they come up to retain this guy when he clearly is a high-end man for legal studies? This is a guy who represented Howard Stern. This is a guy who represented the Rick Ross and T.I.s of the world, and other notable celebrities. And now, if you fast forward to 2024, he's President Trump's attorney. And here this guy was that my family went out and got to represent me. Immediately, my life had felt like it was restored in that moment. Immediately, I felt the courage that I could stand firm against the justice system, that I would not end up as another statistic. He ended up, my family signed the agreement with him. He came to Florida. My mother picked him up, brought him to the jail. And just in the moment of meeting him, I felt it was completely different. Here was a guy that I had been through several attorneys, and his mindset was completely different than anybody I've ever experienced. And he went to talking to me about my case, and he said, I have a legal team that's going to figure everything out, and I'm going to work day and night to see if we can bring you home. And that's the objective. I didn't come out here to take a plea deal. I didn't come out here to lose. I came out here to bring you home. And this is the type of encouragement that I needed to hear, because at the end of the day, I was ready to throw in the towel and just give up. Probably about a week later, he flies back in. He comes to the jail. He sees me. He says, Walt, the state has been holding you with no physical evidence. We've went through every document. We've scanned every document from the police department, the state attorney. We've went to the evidence and reviewed it. Everything that they accuse you of, the gas can, the lighter, anything they said that you used, has all been tested. Have you ever been told that? And I said, no. I said, nobody's ever told me that. And he says, well, none of that stuff, it was tested for you, but none of it matches you. Do you understand what that means? I said, yeah, it supports that I never did these things of what I'm being accused of. He said, exactly. I said, well, why don't you get me out? Why don't you put this in front of a judge and get me out? He said, well, the trial is set for 60 days from now. We can get you out and still have to drop this battle, or I could just expose it at trial and bring you home. I had been in jail for 30 months at that time. What was 60 days to me? Nothing. So in 60 days, my case was set for trial. I had everything on the line. I was facing 5 felony charges, 2 of them punishable by life, where they could remand me for a life sentence in the Department of Corrections. And in trial, I felt like this was my moment to regain my freedom, my reputation, my name. Everything would come out, and it did. He litigated. He called every lie that was put out. He cross-examined them, and then he showed them the evidence report. And in that moment, when he showed them the evidence report, he immediately called for the jury to be dismissed, and he asked the judge for a judgment of acquittal. He asked that this case be dismissed on the presumption that there is no physical evidence that ties in to anything that he's been accused of. In law, it's your side, my side, and what the evidence is. In life, we say it's your side, my side, and the truth. You may tell a version, I may tell a version, but there's a truth in there. In the legal field, it's somebody's version, somebody else's version, but the evidence will sway which way the truth is. And here it is, we were showing them a documentation that nothing that I had been accused with matched me for any DNA, fingerprints, blood, saliva, skin, anything. Nothing had matched me. The innocence was proven at that moment. The judge ended up taking an 1.5-hour break to decide this decision. And in my heart, when this came out, I looked back at my mother in trial and I said, man, this is the moment. Like, it finally had been exposed. He had told me this in private, but now the world got a chance to see it. And I knew in that moment that I would come home. There was nothing else in me that said I would be going to prison. It would just be a matter of time that this judge would walk in from his chambers, render his decision, have them take these cuffs off me and let me go home to my family. Let me go home to my career. Let me go home to my children. Let me go home to my community that has been standing behind me. And when he comes in, he doesn't make eye contact with my defense lawyer. He doesn't make eye contact with me. He puts his head down and says, ruling denied. I'll let the jury decide. And at this time, it not only sunk me, but it sunk my entire defense team. That here we had waited for this aha moment to prove it, and here it is, the judge didn't want to make the decision. He wanted to give it to the jury. Instead of being biased and impartial and make the correct call, he turned a blind eye to me and let me continue to walk down the plank. The jury that I was in front of was not a jury of my peers. It was nobody that looked like me on my jury. Everybody that was on my jury was of the age group of 50 and older. At the time of my arrest, I was 26. I was a young man. Nobody of my peers was on there. As the trial went on, I had jury that fell asleep, that wasn't present. They was absent-minded, spacing out, clearly didn't want to be there. After 5 days of going through trial, exposing the lies, showing proof that nothing matched me, my jury went into deliberation. And in this deliberation, I knew if the judge didn't want to make this call, that the jury would make this call and find me not guilty. Friday, at about 4:30, the judge comes in and says, the jury can't make a decision around 5:15, then we're going to have to bring them back tomorrow, and we'll sit here all day until they get the verdict right. And in this process, I thought, man, they had been in deliberation 7 hours. It's got to be going my way. Something good is being discussed in there. Because if you're guilty, they'll come back, you're guilty, they'll render the decision, and then off you go. But 7 hours of deliberation was a great indication that something was being discussed about my freedom. Something didn't sit right with them. There was something that they couldn't overcome to make a decision. When the judge instructed the jury that if they don't get it right, if they don't make a decision before 5:15, then they're going to come back and be here tomorrow, a decision was made within 10 minutes that I was found guilty of 4 out of the 5 charges. In that moment, I felt like somebody had ripped everything out of me. That my soul, my energy, my heart, everything that I stood for was gone now. I knew for a fact I would go to prison. I knew for a fact that I had lost on one of the life felonies where I could potentially receive a life sentence. I understood how vindictive my prosecutor was when she told me, if you lose on one of these, I'm going to give you a life sentence. Immediately, I was ushered back to jail. Sentencing was set off for 30 days. And in those 30 days, I started to self-medicate myself. I started buying medicine from the people who were taking sleeping pills, and I just was trying to do my best to not even focus on where my future was headed. I just wanted to medicate myself. I fell into a deep depression because I knew where I was going, nobody couldn't save me. I knew I was going to go on a ride that the person that I loved the most was going to have to watch me get on a prison bus and be shipped off to somewhere in the state of Florida. My children who had been disenfranchised of me sitting in jail for 30 months were going to be separated from me forever if I lose and get this life sentence from her. So some of these things that were going through my mind, I just couldn't take it. So I thought it was better to self-medicate myself and stay asleep. When 30 days came, I was brought in front of the judge. I knew that I would be sentenced. If there's ever a moment for all our sports players, you know, you don't want to see somebody hit that last game-winning shot on you. You don't want them to score the last bucket of the game that decides your win or loss. And then I felt like this was that moment magnified, that I had to stand in front of this guy and have him make a decision on my life for things that I didn't do. I had to just sit here and take it. He goes through the song and dance, character witnesses come up, and before it's over with, I'm sentenced to 27 years Florida State Prison. I can remember that. I look back at my mom, and she kept a straight face, and she's the only face that I want to look at before they take me out of the courtroom. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I was headed. I didn't know if I would survive in the environment or where they were sending me to. Immediately when they took me in the back hallway, I collapsed. There was 4 officers. I just couldn't take it. Like, I felt like my life was over with. I felt like I had died in that moment, in that courtroom. Like, that person who was a loving person, never been in trouble, had been denied and done wrong the entire process. When I was sentenced to prison, I was taken on a bus of 150 people. 150 people from our county went to prison that night, and I was ushered off to prison. In the first 3 years, I fell into a big, deep depression. You know, I was sentenced to 27 years. So in our county, or excuse me, our state, majority of the people who have the most time, they get sentenced to the Panhandle, where all the people in the Panhandle have big time. So there's a lot of fights, there's a lot of gangs, there's a lot of war zones that you go into. And I had been sent to one prison that was just extremely violent. And for a year, I figured out a way to try to avoid the violence. There were things that I got into that were uncontrollable, that I had no choice. People would just bump you or try to pick a fight with you, and they would want to figure out real quick, could you stand firm, or were you going to be that guy that gets punked or taken advantage of? Elijah Anderson, for you guys who are into criminology, he talks about code switching, where it's important for you to code switch. You got to figure out how to get the juice. You don't want somebody to punish you and take from you. You have to change and adapt. And this is what he was talking about in his academic theory, and this is what was taking place in my life. So in the process of adapting, I said, let me apply to be a school teacher, because I come from an educational background. At least this would keep me off the compound. They agreed, and then I became a certified tutor in the Florida Department of Corrections, where I would teach and assist people to get their GED. And then about 8 months later, a transfer came, and then I got sent to the #1 worst prison in the state of Florida, where people were dying, people were getting stabbed every week. You know, when I got off the bus, the officer says, nobody transfers out of here. This is called the graveyard. And in that process, he was explaining that everybody here has 80 years or a life sentence. This is that compound. So if you see fighting and stabbing, we're going to put them right back on the compound. We hope that they kill each other, because they're not going anywhere. And this is the environment that I was subjected to. And this was the worst environment. You know, there are some of the trauma effects that I still have from time to time because of this environment and the things that I've seen in the Department of Corrections, things that are not humanly possible for you to witness, whether it be from an officer or be from the hands of another inmate. And then something happened. A population adjustment transfer happened, and I got shipped off to another prison. And in this prison, this is where something magical happened. I had been working for an officer, and I was given no longer the school teacher job. I was given trash detail. And I was the guy that would go around and have to pick up all the trash in the prison, and often guards would give drugs, contraband, to inmates to pass around to people they were selling drugs to. And I had an officer that would force me to take away contraband and drop it off to people that he was making money to. And at first it was very uncomfortable. I was in an environment that everybody in prison was making money. So here it is, a young man that had been successful, and then he gets exposed to making $50, $100 a day cash money while I'm incarcerated. I couldn't believe. And I couldn't believe that this was taking place with officers subjecting people to work for them, or else they would put them in confinement, have them beat up, and then they would come back to the compound, and you would still have to figure out who you're going to work for. And this is the environment that I was in. And then one day, an officer is standing by out there at the yard, and she calls me over there, and she says, "Walter Dunn, come here." And at that moment, I thought, how does this lady know my name? I've never spoken to her a day in my life. And what have I done? So I walk over to her, and she says, "You know, Walter, when are you going to stop walking around the compound?" She said, "I reviewed your file. You know, you tested in the top 5 of the smartest people in the Department of Corrections, the top 5, and you're out here running around making money. You need to be focused on a 27-year sentence that the state of Florida gave you." And in this moment, when she said this to me, my brain started to go off of, how does she know my sentence? How does she know test scores? How does she know me? And in that moment, I laughed it off, and I said, "Well, ma'am, I'm just out here picking up trash." And she said, "Well, you know, God spoke to me, and I'm retiring Friday. I'm taking over in the law library, and I'm going to hire you to work for me because I was told that you have the ability to get out of prison." And I didn't believe her. I said, "All right, ma'am, thank you so much." Monday came, job change. I seen it on the sheet. I had been placed to the law library, but I was making money every day, so I didn't go. I just, you know, what is she going to do? Put me in jail? I'll give it back out of jail. I'll make more money. So I didn't go to work Monday. Tuesday, I get called over the loudspeaker. Now, a prison etiquette rule, that is, if you get called, your name gets called over the loudspeaker, you're going to confinement. So people started asking you, "Can I get your bunk? Can I get your clothes? Can I get your tennis shoes? We'll see you in 2 weeks." And I couldn't understand why I was being called over the loudspeaker, but the rule of thumb is if you get called over the loudspeaker, you're going to confinement. So we'll see you later. We'll see you in however they hide you. We'll see you when you get back. And when I walk out there to the center gate, it's a librarian, and it's the warden. And the warden says, if we got to call you one more time, we're going to shut this whole compound down until we find you, and I'm going to place you in confinement. And then when you get out of confinement, you're still going to work at the law library because this is what she requested. This had been a 20-year sergeant who ended up retiring and then did double duty and was double ditching, and she became the librarian. So she had great respect at this compound. And when the warden says this, it's kind of like the president speaking to you. If he don't want you to go to school, you're not going to go to school. You're out of here. And I understood the severity of his words. So I said, okay, I will go to the library. Tomorrow I will be compliant. When I went down to the library, she took me in her office and she said, well, I want you to be as honest and transparent as possible. You can answer any questions. I'm going to keep it right here because I want to talk to you about your case. She closed the door and we had this open conversation. She says, well, how long have you been moving contraband around on the compound? I said, well, since I've been here. You know, I got signed this work detail, and you know, there's officers that make me drop off things, and now it just became a routine. They turn a blind eye when you take cigarettes here. They turn a blind eye when you take this here. You know, I make a little money. It's just what I do. She said, okay. She says, well, how much money do you make a day? And I say, I make anywhere from $25 to $75 a day. And then she asked me, well, what do you do with the money? I said, well, I asked the officer to mail it home for me. You know, I want to make sure my mother can have money at home to come and see me, put money on the phone so I can call her. You know, we've lost a lot of money in the justice system, so I feel like the $25 I sent home, you know, at least gives my mother something. And her last question was, she said, Walt, do you have a cell phone? And this is the #1 rule breaker in prison. They don't ever want a person to have a cell phone because you have the ability to, you know, harass victims, or you have the ability to call shots and, you know, get drugs in, or you have the ability to harass officers, and that's like a big thing that the Department of Corrections don't want to have. But it's the #1 money maker in the Department of Corrections, so you have a lot of the dirty officers that bring the cell phones in because they are the highest value. The little Walmart flip phones that you get for $20, these are going for $400 and $500 in the Department of Corrections, sold by officers. So if you have one of these, you know, the officer made money, but you have a lifeline where you can call and speak to people. And when I told her I had a cell phone, she asked me to get rid of it. And I just said, you know, this is the way I speak to my family. This is the way I call my mom to figure out how she's doing. You know, she takes seizure medicine. You know, she falls out sometimes. I need to make sure that she's okay. And she says, well, where you're going, you're never going to need a cell phone. And if you get caught with a cell phone, you're never going to be working in the law library again. So I'm asking you to give it up. You know, you're going to be able to do this, but I need you to be fully on board. And this was a hard decision for me, to be able to call, and, you know, guys want to be able to speak to, you know, people, and they want to be able to feel like they're relevant. And to ask me to give up this lifeline was just something that I just wager with, that I just didn't want to do it. But something told me that you're better than this. And if she believes in you, then I should believe in myself. And that night I sold the cell phone, and I came back to work the next day, and she says, I'm going to put you with the best law clerk, and he's going to teach you law, and I'm going to watch you pass all 9 certifications to become a state certified law clerk, because you're the smartest. You're the smartest person in our compound in the last 20 years. You're smart, Walt. You got this. And that confidence, that belief, is also what Hershey Social Bonding talks about in his theory. Talks about, you know, that belief, that attachment, that involvement. You know, that belief in me gave me belief that I could do it. And 8-9 months passed, and I ended up passing all the state certified law clerk courses. And I became a state certified law clerk, which basically made me like the prison lawyer. I was educated enough, I had passed all the tests, I got a certificate basically to say I could practice law within the Department of Corrections. And something fascinating happened. When I started reading the law, it started to like really jump off the page to me. It really started to answer questions about my own case. You know, it became like an obsession. I would go to my cell and I would just read. I would sit here and read any type of law book I could possibly get my hands on. I would write universities Georgetown, Yale, Harvard, Florida State. I would write these universities and ask them legal questions. Some of them wouldn't answer, some of them would. Some of them would even send me a law book back, and I would read that. And then I started writing lawyers questions, and then they would ask me to take my case, and I would just tell them I have no money, and they would stop writing. But I would try to get the answer out of them. So I started thinking outside the box on how I could become the best lawyer. And then something happened. I was transferred. I was transferred out of that institute from all the good work that I was doing, and I was transferred closer to home. And in the process of being transferred closer to home, the librarian lady knew that I was being transferred. She told me the night before, Walt, you're being transferred closer to home. Finally, there's a population adjustment. You'll be closer to your mom. And she comes out to me the day that I'm leaving, and she says, I believe in you. You know, I don't know what your faith is. We never discussed that, but God told me, Walt, you're going to be the one that does it. And when you do it, just never forget my name. And she ended up telling me her full name. She said, when you get out one day, give me a call, let me know that it's been done. And just that aura around her, and she was like a grandmother feel. She was probably like in her 70s. You know, she was like a grandmother to me and treated me as such. And I said, yes, ma'am, I'll look for you when I get out. And in that moment, I believed that it would happen. That was the first sign that I felt that what the state of Florida had did to me and the sentence that it had gave me would not be final. The next prison I go to, I get into the law library. I started educating myself again, and I started doing motions for people. And I got the first person out of prison. I got him from release, emergency release from incarceration, where he was able to go home to his family. And in that moment, I said it was time to start working on my own case. There are time limitations that you have to go through, things you have to file by certain times. So the pressure was on. And I had always been against doing my own case because I felt like I had became so obsessed with it that maybe sometimes when somebody else looks at your car, that they may find the problem versus you looking at it because you've been looking at it for 10 years. And in that moment, it just happened for me. It just happened where I could look at my case and I could really start to see the flaws in my case. And then I became obsessed with how did my state attorney beat me. I started becoming obsessed, like how come the evidence of me having no evidence against me didn't free me. And then I started working my case, and like my room became a collage. So if you would come to my cell, I was the guy that was posting everything up on the wall. And it's against protocol to have things posted on your wall because they feel like you might be using that as a cover-up to escape. But a lot of the prison officials and guards, they knew exactly who I was, and they knew how hard I worked, and they let me have it. And it became like something sacred to me. And I would just close myself off, and then I became obsessed with, I didn't want to just be smart. I wanted to be smarter than anybody else that was in the prison and in society. I knew that the hurdle for me to do the paperwork on my own, I had to be smarter than the state attorney who was going to fight against this one day. When I was already practicing law for other people, I would see the response back from state attorneys and knew that I had to be smarter than the state attorney, and I had to be smarter than the judge. I had to prepare myself in advance for the responses they were already going to give me. I had to be able to take pieces off the board so they couldn't use it against me. I had to start expanding my mind to think about possibilities that were never even there. And then I filed a motion on my behalf and submitted it. And I explained to my mom, I said, Mom, I will get my day in court. I have enough. I have enough to get out. And she was like, you know what? I mean, she's a big critic. I mean, some of you guys have met her. If you get along with her, she's going to talk you to death. And she would be like, you know, Walt, she's like, what about the doctor? Did you see a doctor that night? And I would just like shut her down. And I was like, Mom, I'm not going through no more. I got an airtight motion, and I got enough. They're going to give me a court date. Just be patient. If we got to wait a year, well, let's wait a year. And she just kept nagging. She was like, Walt, you know, I've been reading some things. Take a look at the doctor. And usually when we fight like that, it's a healthy fight. And I went back to my cell. I started researching about the importance of a doctor being able to testify in court. And she was right. She was 100% right. And this was another key on top of the motion I had already filed that could solidify my freedom. And something started wagering in me, why do you want to take this chance? And I said, okay, I will. And then I started researching, and then I found a case that mirrored mine exactly with the doctor. And I said, Mom, you're going to need to track this guy down, and if he can put it in writing, then it's golden. True enough, she's the best detective that I got, best one I've never paid for. And she found this guy, and he was happened to be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and she drove down to meet him, and she just asked him, please, my son's been sentenced to nearly 30 years for something he didn't do. Can you just look at the evidence? If nothing more, just let me know. You know, if it's a waste of your time, I apologize, but it was worth me driving from Tampa to Fort Lauderdale to ask you this in person. This is how serious it is. And to my, to my good fortune, the guy agreed. He said, you know what, that's a lot of time. I'll review it. Probably about 2 weeks later, the guy calls my mom and says, listen, I don't know why he's in prison, and I'm willing to go back to court and testify, and I absolutely 100% put it in writing for him. So he notarized a document, which was an affidavit that I was able to use in a supplemental motion, and I filed it. In about 8 months, me and the state kept going back and forth, and then about a year later, the judge granted a hearing, and I was taken back to Hillsborough County. I was transported back out of prison, back into the courthouse where I had got sentenced to 27 years, and I felt like my freedom was in reach. All the hard work that I had been working on, all the late night reading, all the activities that I chose not to be a part of had produced this moment right here. And when I came back into Hillsborough County, something took a turn. The same state attorney who prosecuted me was back to fight my case personally. She had moved on. I had been tracking her career, and she moved on to another division. But when I came back, she signed as the state attorney and personally came back to try to keep me in bondage. And just seeing her, I felt bad for her, because I know she looked at me as another case, but she took me personal, and she had prejudgment, and she knew in her heart that there was no physical evidence. The state of Florida couldn't produce one document that said that the evidence that they had against me matched me for any of the crimes that I was alleged to commit. She knew this. And in the process of coming back, I looked at her not with pity, but with admiration that you would take somebody's life and throw it away because it's a quota to you, or it's an advancement for you to put somebody behind bars, and you looked at me as another number. I didn't know at the time that the Bureau Institute of Justice released a statement that 2 people wait a wrongful conviction every single day. I didn't know that the Bureau of Justice in 2001 made a forecast that 1 in 3 African-American males in their time in life will be arrested or incarcerated. When the Bureau Institute of Justice released this in 2001, we didn't take a pandemic approach to try to eradicate this. And what's even more horrific about this is that it is true today. There are 80 million people that are in our society with an arrest or a criminal record. You know, just to put it in real perspective, during the slavery time, 400-year period, there are more people incarcerated now, 2.2 million people, than there ever was in the slavery era. We have more people in bondage today than there ever was in slavery. So I didn't know these statistics. I didn't know them then, but I knew I had become a part of a statistic, a wrongful conviction. My prosecutor immediately came over and saw that the motion was filed pro se and asked me what law clerk had filed my motion. Didn't ask me anything else but who filed this paperwork. Right there in that moment, I knew that I had enough. I just never let on that it was me. And she ended up trying to negotiate with me. She said, hey, Walt, I'll take off a couple of charges and we can keep you in prison for another couple of years. And that's great. You know, I'll give you something here. And I said, absolutely not. And what she did was she sent me back to prison, signed the order, transferring me out of the jail, sent me back to prison, had put my case off for another 4 months. 4 months had came by. I didn't have a court date. She called for me, put the order in. They transferred me back to the county jail. And she met with me in the county jail and said, hey, Walt, how about I take off 2 charges and we'll try to figure out what's the appropriate sentence. And in that moment, you know, I became angered. You're playing with my life and you're trying to take off charges that should have never been there. We should never even have this argument. I'm asking for my freedom. That's the only type of deal that we can have. And she got very frustrated, signed the order, sent me back to prison. Her objective was to try to negotiate a backdoor plea with me to keep me incarcerated versus letting me have the moment in front of the judge where the judge can decide my freedom. So when I ever thought that backdoor deals didn't happen, I was being shown first person that anything a state attorney wants to do with you behind closed doors can happen, whether take charges off, reduce time, add one, subtract one. I was being proven in this moment that this can happen without ever stepping foot in court, that you have the discretion to alter somebody's sentence without them ever being in front of a judge. Did I think this was ethical? Did I think this was fair? That my life was being toyed with after I had been years of incarceration? The next time I said, Mom, I said, the only way I get away from this lady is I got to hire a lawyer just to stand in front of me so she doesn't bully me anymore. So my mom, she said, Walt, this is very difficult for me. You know, when we went and got Steve from Atlanta, Georgia, we became financial destitute. I didn't know when the pandemic came that my mother's dentistry job had closed down and she was Ubering just to make sure that I had winter clothes or food. I didn't know how bad it got because she had kept that from me. I didn't know the hardship that she had endured because she did so well of trying to keep me afloat and keep me encouraged and keep me focused on the main goal and not worry about the financial burdens that she was going through behind closed doors. And she said, well, we can do this, but I'll go further in the debt. And I wagered, and I said, Mom, the only way I get around this lady is I got to have somebody to safeguard me so that way she doesn't bully me. And true enough, she came through for me again and hired a lady, and the lady stood in, and she wanted to know who did the motion. And I told the lady I did the motion, and I didn't understand everything about this case. And there's nothing that this lady can do. There's nothing she can stop it. Just get me the hearing in front of the judge. In that moment, she never knew that we had already had the doctor on board, that the doctor said whenever the court date is given, I will take off and I will drive. I will make sure that I'm there. I will make sure that I am able to speak on his behalf and fight for his freedom, because this is unjust and he should be incarcerated. And I'll put my career, my reputation, my livelihood on how I feed my family on the line for your son to bring him home. We had the hearing. The doctor came. He showed up. And he advocated. And every time the state attorney tried to throw a curveball, he was hitting it out of the park. He was explaining to the judge that there is no physical evidence that supports that he committed crime. It's so bad that he's an adjunct professor that he could teach about this. There's no way that he could have committed these crimes. And he backed it up by evidence. The same thing that we talked about in Johnson's class today with forensics. I can show you to it. And he beat it home, and he beat it home. And I could see in that moment in the judge's eyes that she knew that I had been wrongly convicted, that I was part of a wrong statistic. And she knew in that moment, and I felt it was a connection when I looked up at her, like, please save me. About 90 days later, she didn't make the ruling then. You know, they have a process where they got to review transcripts and have judicial assistants read behind and look at things. But eventually the verdict came, and she had overturned my conviction. And in that moment of being able to be set free, it was something that I never thought could be possible for me. I never thought that the day they took my freedom away and gave me 27 years that I could beat them, that I could figure it out, that I could put it all on my back and work hard and obtain my freedom for something that they took away from me. And now, because of what I've been through, I go all over the country and I speak to students. But usually I open it up for questions and answers this time, but I want to answer some things for you. And I could tell you about statistics. I could tell you about what the Vera Institute of Justice released. You know, I can tell you every statistic, but today I want to talk to you about solutions. I can tell you how bad and ugly the criminal justice system. I can tell you that if you're black or brown, that you're going to be arrested 9 times more than your counterpart. These are statistics that you can back it up. These are statistics that they are doing, running code and doing quantitative and qualitative research on, that they project at these conferences that we go to. But today I want to talk to you about solutions. And the one big thing that you guys have here at Hartwick is you have an identity. If somebody believes in your identity, it's so transformational. When you set foot and you say, this is who I am, people will believe that and they will fight behind you. You have incredible staff, professors here that want to be engaged in your life. And I ask you, from me to you, please don't ever take it for granted. Your education is so vital. If it wasn't for my education, I would still be in prison right now. I self-taught myself so much law that I became a competition with lawyers that I could outsmart them. I didn't want to be the smartest man in prison. I wanted to be the smartest man in the room. I wanted to be able to take cases and figure it out and find the wrong and get people out. I wanted to look at things from an objective standpoint and expand my mind to new possibilities that are never given. And when I come to colleges and I speak in front of students or I go into classrooms, I really pay attention to what student is really taking it personal. Somebody's paying for your education. You've been given an opportunity. And this group of people that are in our criminology and just in education in general has the ability to advance justice. We can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. I can go to every university and I can talk. I can tell my story. I can promote change. I can talk about reform. I can talk statistics. I can talk law. But it's going to take a collective effort, not only from the people in these classrooms, not only from the teachers, but from our community to really stand firm on the change in our area. We have the ability to come together and unite change. And I'm asking you to, when you go to class, to be present, to be mentally present. Because there's something that you can learn today that could free somebody tomorrow. I was the guy that was in prison writing you, the college student, asking you for help, asking you for you to help me answer this question that could help me climb or help me get to another level. I needed that help. I was denied my education, so the only education I could give myself at the time was teaching myself law. And that's something my mom kids me all the time. She said, well, why you didn't learn Spanish? And I said, Mom, the only thing that I wanted to learn was law. And because of me educating myself, self-educating myself, disciplining myself, it got me to where I am today. So when I go around the country and I speak to university professors or the wonderful professors that collaborate and bring me in, I not only challenge the students, I challenge them too. If you have an opportunity to be an educator, you have the ability to motivate, inspire, and encourage so many people. So many people. And if you're not going at 100%, how can you expect the people under you to go at 100%? You have to lead by example. Everything that I do since I've been walking free is to lead by example. I stand up for our juveniles in our community. I'm partnership with our juveniles in our community, the people who really fight to safeguard that. In the state of Florida, there is no age group on when they can send a child to prison. If a 12-year-old child takes a gun out of his father's house and plays with it in the yard and shoots the friend or the neighbor and the neighbor dies, the state of Florida will prosecute him as an adult and sentence him accordingly to the 10-20 life statute. That child who made an innocent decision, a careless one because somebody left a gun out, will be sentenced to adult prison. His life will be altered forever. One of the big things that I go after is making sure that we safeguard our children. You guys are young adults, but there are people in our community that look at you as still as our children. And what I want to say is that as you continue to grow and inspire, that you get around people who want to go in the same direction that you want to go. If they're not going 100%, if they're not focused like you, then find people who are. You know, there are Steve Jobs who had a wonderful quote who said that those who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world are usually the ones who do. And that's so true, because he believed that he could change technology and they laughed at him. And then he did something extraordinary and he became a revolutionary and he changed the way that we do social communication. And it's the same thing that you guys have. You guys, when I go to these conferences in Philly or Chicago or Atlanta, I meet some incredible students who have incredible minds. And they're around incredible people who want to be inspired, who want to go to another level. You can be average, and you can live an average life, or you can take your education serious and see where it takes you. My education got me out of prison. Self-taught, filing a motion that was self-sufficient to meet requirements by the judicial system, and also take away arguments and things that I knew the state and the judges would put against me, because I didn't want to settle for complacency. And I sat in class today, I saw a little bit of that. I saw a little bit of students not caring, or the complacency, or not the drive to be present. But I can assure you that as you stand here at this institution, that the people here, I could feel it last night, I could feel it when I walked through campus today, I could feel it when I shake hands, that the people at this institution care, personal care. I go some to the tier 1 universities, and they're just another name. They don't even know your name, you're just another student. You get graded by some judicial, not a judicial assistant, but some TA does your grading, and then that's what it is. But these professors here actually know your name, walking by, and me, I'm starting to think that everybody plays lacrosse here, you know? So I just want to inspire you guys that I'm living proof that anything is possible, that no matter how bleak the situation is, no matter how dark it seems, no matter what you go through, you have the ability to overcome. You have the ability to work yourself out of a jam. You have the ability to climb out of something and do something extraordinary. And that's what I ask you to do now. I ask you to go out into your community, partner with some of the local agencies, do field work. The people who want to see change in the criminal justice system have a hand in the justice system. Either they were indirectly or directly impacted, or they go out and they see court cases, they go to the jails, they go to the prisons, they interact with law enforcement so they can see it. Because you can't help bring change if you can't have a hand on it. And I'm so grateful for the organizations that I've partnered with that have brought somebody like me who has the lived experience into some of the boards that I get a chance to speak on, because I'm able to answer the questions that are often looming here on how do we bring change, how do we promote excellence, how do we safeguard that. When I said 80 million people are living in our society with a criminal record, these are the people that have been disenfranchised. These are the people who can't get housing, employment because of a criminal record. There are 32 states right now in the United States that have banned the box, that are giving people who are formerly incarcerated an opportunity to apply for employment. but these 80 million people are often infected. And if there's anything that I can inspire you today is do the work for yourself, do the research for yourself, know what it is that you're being taught, because you have the ability to advance education, you have the ability to advance justice. And I am just so grateful to be here at Hartwick, to be able to be treated, you know, the way, the welcome, the handshakes, the smiles, the interactions. You know, this is very personal to me, and I look forward to the day that I can come back to Hartwick. You know, I do want to answer some questions, because at this time I usually open it up for answering questions. I had 2 children, and one of my children is still a minor. So being brought back into my children's life, you know, I've decided to place that on hold until my last child turns an adult. Both my children still stay with their mother, and to put myself in the best position where I don't get accused of something else, or, you know, any type of police get called or injunctions get placed on me, it was just best to be hands off, to work extremely hard, to focus on bettering myself, so that way when I do get back into my children's life, I can give them something. Not just give them my story, but, you know, be there for them financially, be there for them emotionally, be there for the things that they need as they're going on and growing up in life too. Another thing that people often ask me is, what was it like to be incarcerated? It was the worst thing in my life. It was the worst day of my life to be arrested for something I didn't do. But I praise God every day that I had the fortitude and the mindset to never give up. I'm incredibly grateful for having my mother here today, as she was instrumental in me fighting for my freedom. This was a lady who never wavered. You know, when I lost friends, I lost family members, I lost my career, I lost my education, I even lost my self-identity at times. It was her support that kept me focused. It was her support that said that you can do this, that you're smart enough. I never thought I was that smart, but, you know, after hard work and determination, it got me here. And the same thing that I'm able to gift you is everybody has that same opportunity every day to wake up and be successful. Every day you come to school, you have the opportunity to think outside the box and work with incredible people who want to see you succeed. And I can guarantee you, on the days that you feel like giving up, on the days that you feel like you don't want to do homework, on the days that you want to skip class, think about how hard they work to make sure that you get it. They get up and make the same decisions you do. Put clothes on, feed themselves, fight traffic, get here, prepare a lesson plan, and then they choose to educate you. So they've already went through 4 or 5 steps and make sure that you get it. They don't have to. This is the path that they've chosen. And because they make those decisions every day, you should take it equally serious. That, hey, I need to get this information. Because you can graduate and have a diploma and go get an average job and say, hey, I'm working, I'm making a living. Or you can get the education and let it open up doors for you that you never thought were possible. My education has opened up doors for me that I never even thought was possible. And because of what I've been through, I have applied in 2015 to get back into the University of South Florida. This is when I was still incarcerated. I figured that as I'm learning the law, I still want to get my education done, that I could work on higher education. The University of South Florida, Tier 1 University, said, no, we won't let you back in. You can't go to school while you're incarcerated. When I got out, I started partnering with them. And to the point now that they have accepted me back in school, and they have put 2 counselors on me to streamline, so that way I can graduate and go into law school and be a lawyer. Because my ultimate end game is to fight for people who are done unjust, to fight for children who get placed in the system and that they're going for a ride where they don't know where they're going. You know, my goal is to become a lawyer, to advocate, to continue to fight and advance justice, because I'm inspired when I go around and I meet incredible people like you. I'm inspired when I meet university professors and I read their CV or read their track on how far or how hard it took for them to get to where they're at. Or incredible professors that spent 9, 10 years of their life to try to reach a certain level so they can get a title in front of their name and they can be forever golden to teach you. I'm inspired. And because of that, you know, I want to continue on to help change the world. But I cannot do it alone. It's going to take you, it's going to take me, it's going to take our community to get involved, to change. It takes us all. And I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate being here. I've had an incredible time. Hartwick, you have been very special to me. I'm glad I could share my story. I love traveling the country. I produced 2 books, How to Navigate Through the Criminal Justice System, because I understood as I was doing law work for children, primarily children, there were a lot of families that were going through the system for the first time. When I had my mother trying to buy law books for me to educate myself, some of these books were very expensive, $300, $400, and we just couldn't afford them. So now as I was working on my freedom, I wrote a 117-page on how to navigate through the criminal justice system, so that way every family could afford a book to educate them on how to keep a lawyer accountable, things that need to be filed, and how to find their way through the system as I did. And now I have it. It's in the stage of being placed on Amazon as we speak, so that way the world can have it, including my story. My story is very detailed, very personal account of what I went through. It's even more detailed than the story I shared tonight about the hardship that I went through and the pain of losing my family, my career, my children. So I've produced that book. I have another book that's coming out too. It's the second installment of a series, and this talks about the incarceration part and what I faced when I was there on my fight to my freedom. So I want to say thank you. At this time, if you guys want to open it up for questions, everything is on the table. I'm willing to answer any questions that you guys have.
Sorry. We have two people who have microphones in either aisle, so just raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll be happy to answer them. Yeah.
I was wondering, how did the other prisoners feel about you fighting your case? Like, were any of them supportive, like, towards you? Did some of them, like, directly oppose you? Like, how did that happen?
Unique happened. You know, gangs primarily dominate the prison environment. You know, they pretty much say what goes on, but when you become like a law clerk, you become like special to them. So if you're the guy that's getting people out of prison or getting sentences reduced or getting people in better situations, you know, you kind of get a special treatment. So I really never had any issues. I was kind of like the law guy and kind of like a hands-off, like we don't mess with him, and you know, we'll do anything he needs because he's working on such and such case. So, you know, fighting for people, you know, became widely spread at the institutions that I was at, that, you know, we have a gifted guy who understands law, and if you take him his paperwork, he'll figure it all out for you, and that's usually what I did. There were countless people that not only did I get free, and their documentary series is coming out speaking about how I did their legal work and got them released from prison, but there are, I would say, maybe 50 or 60 guys realistically that I changed their life legally, with getting sentence reductions and things like that, getting back in the lives of their children, family court issues, injunctions dismissed. So I never had a really tough issue. You know, I was more like the guy to go see. Yes, sir.
Probably have time for one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things I kind of thought of is how, like, what type of resentment do you have towards those people who kind of wronged you in the process of the conviction, and how do you handle those negative emotions?
Well, that's a great question. I get it every university I go to, I can assure you. One of the things is we are in control of our own self. And, you know, I have the option to either hold resentment, be angered, or use the energy that I have for something good. You know, that wrongful period has taken place. It's taken its course. And I never thought that while I was incarcerated, I would find my purpose in life. But maybe this is the path that God wanted me to go on. So versus using that energy to be angry or try to get back or do something crazy or, you know, be frustrated, or, you know, I choose to stay away from that, and I choose to focus on the greatness that I'm chasing. You know, I can use my energy to serve a negative purpose, or I can use my energy to serve a positive purpose. The positive purpose is here at Hartwick, where I can be inspiring, and I can meet incredible professors, and I can share my story and try to put a sense of purpose in you that anything is possible. You know, I was told that I may never walk free again. I had a prosecutor to tell me that I'm going to give you the life sentence. You know, I got sentenced to a long time, but I stand here today to show you that all things are possible. So you wake up every day with the opportunity to displace your energy. You want to do it for the negative things, or you want to do it for the positive things. There's so many negative things in the world. You know, if you keep your mind solid, you keep your mind focused, just focus on the positive things, because there are great things that will happen for you when you do right. There's so many bad things that happen to you when you want to do wrong. I don't choose to focus on that. I choose to go around and meet incredible people, inspire people, speak at conferences and summits, and share my story and push and hope that collectively we can advance justice. That is my fight, to take down some of the statistics. You know, there is 1 in 7 people, fall back into recidivism within 3 years of being released. So it's so easy, the number is so high that when people, it's over 65% of people that go back into the system once they get released because they fall back into recidivism. You know, there's so many things that we can change, we can run data on, qualitative and quantitative research, but we can fight for change. And I want to be known as that guy that had an incredible story, who took the worst odds against him and made lemonade. Yes, sir.
Okay, this will be the last one, sorry. I don't want to keep people over.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, after everything that you've experienced and been through in and out the criminal justice system with your family, what was the biggest lesson you feel like you've taken away from it and want to eventually teach your children that when you get back into contact with them?
I think the biggest thing that I take away is just the importance of time. We take time for granted, and it's so hard to put that into real perspective for you guys because you've never had time taken away from you. There are thousands of people that I've met that want to go and further their education, but will never be able to walk free, will never be able to explain that they were done wrong because of time limitations put on them by a court system. So, when I speak for the voiceless. I speak for the people who have been wrongly convicted, such as myself. But the most important thing is your time. What do you do with your time? Your time is so valuable. You have the opportunity every day to educate, to inspire, to motivate, to climb to wherever you want to be at in life. So the question becomes, why can't you be that person? I believe that you could be a superstar. I believe that you can make a difference in this world, but you got to believe it too. And when you start believing it, you start understanding how important your time is. So the things that you do with your time as a reflection of where you want to go. I could have got out and, wanted to go see the old guys in the neighborhood. I could want to feel like I could still play football again. I could have signed up for Hartwick and said, hey, they went 1-9 last year. Maybe I'll give me a shot, Y'all be easy with that one. So I just think that your time is very valuable. And when you start to understand how invaluable your time is, you'll start making decisions reflective of that time. So if there's something that you're passionate about, something that you want to see come into fruition, then you'll start dedicating time to that goal. And so many of us can reach these goals. So many of us think that things are unattainable. But when you believe in yourself, everything is within reach.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Walter, for your excellent speech. If you have any other questions, I'm sure Walter will be hanging around for a little bit. You can come up to the front and ask. But thank you guys. Have a great rest of your Friday and enjoy your weekend.